Diarrhea exploded from the woman, splattering the seats and dribbling down the aisle. She was on a flight when her stomach suddenly began hurtling, and she got up to use the bathroom, but she didn't make it. The smell hit immediately, making nearby passengers gag and retch. The crew's desperate attempts to clean it only spread the mess further, and it got so bad that the pilot decided to make an emergency landing. Have you ever wondered why brushing your teeth makes everything taste like shit? I noticed some of the comments were claiming I was full of shit. Just as you're about to wipe, a man in a red cape asks, red paper or blue paper? Legend says that if you choose red, you'll be slashed to death, and your clothes will be soaked in blood. But if you choose blue, you'll be strangled until your face changes color. Now you might think you can trick him by choosing yellow, but that just means he'll dunk your head in the toilet, holding you there until you drown. If you get stabbed in the eye, place a cup around the knife and wrap it in gauze to stabilize it. Then cover both eyes. This is because if one moves, the other moves too, which can tear the wound open even more. Keep your head still and get to the emergency room, where doctors will carefully remove it before sealing up the hole in your eye. As you slice down, the blade can slip off the pit and shoot in your hand if you try to cut an avocado while holding it. If you stab the pit to twist it out, it can also slip, sending the knife into your fingers. Then it will fly around like a tiny pet on a leash. Now repeat this process 100 more times to create a flying wasp army. They'll protect you by stinging anything that comes your way, but they could also just as easily turn on you. And once they're green screened out, the killer doll comes to life. Keeps rising until the battery bursts, shooting hot metal and flames straight into your face. It can burn your lips, shatter teeth, and leave permanent scars. Rub the mushroom on your feet to collect the spores. Then put on wet socks and wrap a plastic bag around your feet to trap humidity and heat inside. Over the next few days, the dead skin from your feet will start to shed, and the mushroom spores will use this to grow, spreading tiny root-like threads. Every so often, spray more water inside the bag to keep them moist. In theory, small mushrooms would actually start to sprout in just a few weeks, turning your dead skin into fungi. But the chest skin grew hair inside his throat. Years later, the hair ended up dangling deep in his windpipe, and as he breathed in, it felt like he was choking. Doctors had to burn the hair off just so he could breathe normally again. They crammed the 500-pound body inside the chamber and turned up the flames to cremate it. But as it began to burn, the massive amount of fat started to liquefy, and then it ignited. Chunks of burning fat launched up through the vent system, landing on the roof. This set the rubber material on fire, forcing workers inside to evacuate. And by the time firefighters arrived, the roof was engulfed in flames. If you swab the microbes off of your skin and drop them into a jar of flour and water, they'll start to eat the sugars inside the flour. And as they break it down, they release carbon dioxide gas. Over a few days, the mixture will bubble up as more and more gas is released. Next, add more flour and water, kneading it together until you have dough. And when you bake it, you'll have your very own sourdough using your body's natural yeast. If you were crushed with a hydraulic press, would it be strong enough to press you into a tiny cube? Well, your body is mostly made of water, and water can't be compressed. So you would have to remove all of the fluids by drying out completely. Then you'd have to grind up your bones and organs into fine powder. Finally, you could crush it all together, turning an entire human into a dense little cube about the size of a football. She presses her tongue right against the surface of their eyeball and moves it all around. And this supposedly pulls out tiny pieces of metal and debris. Now, people actually travel to this woman, paying her to remove things in their eyes like this. And they claim she can heal most eye problems just by licking it. But it's actually dangerous because it can spread serious infections from her tongue that could leave you permanently blind. They would poop through a wooden plank with a hole cut in it, right above the crashing waves. When you spray a line of Zack films, you would completely lose your balls. But should you actually do this? You see, Zack films slammed into the area with unimaginable force, obliterating everything in its path. Zack films swept entire neighborhoods away, leaving nothing behind but rubble. And over 167,000 people lost their lives in this region alone. And this happened because Zack films fall into a coma for over 400 days. So instead, call 911 immediately and leave a gay bomb. And if all else fails, rub the Zack films on your feet balls to collect the spores. Then, in theory, small Zack films would actually start to sprout in just a few weeks, turning your balls into Zack films. Priests would remove all of your internal organs if you died in ancient Egypt. Now, they would leave your heart, since they believed it was essential for the afterlife, but they'd store the other organs in jars. Then, your body would be covered in salt for 40 days, which sucked out all of the moisture and prevented you from decaying. Afterwards, your body would be wrapped in layers of linen and sealed in resin, making you a mummy. If you shove a stick in the ground and rub it with another stick, there's a good chance that worms will start to crawl to the surface in droves. This is because the vibrations mimic the sensation of rain, and worms like the rain because it allows them to move around better on the surface without drying out. So when they sense these vibrations, they think it's rain falling on the ground, which causes them to come out and get caught. Stick your finger behind the eye and pop it right out of the tuna. The current shot through his neck, chest, and hand, searing his skin, but he managed to tear the necklace off just in time, leaving him with nothing but severe burns. He filmed himself rubbing meat on his butt and sticking cheese up his nose before putting them on sandwiches to serve at Domino's. They posted the videos online as a prank, but just hours later, the clips went viral, and it shocked everyone who saw it. Some viewers even tracked down the exact store location, and the two employees were quickly fired and arrested. Domino's even sent out a public apology, but the damage was done and their sales dropped by 50%. He gulped down a live goldfish in front of a crowd as a dare until the skull breaks free, leaving it stuck wearing the head and antlers like an unwanted trophy. If you clap both ears, your cupped hands create a pressure wave that slams into your eardrums from both sides. This compresses the delicate hair cells inside. Now, these hairs convert sound into electric signals. Once they're damaged, they don't grow back. And if the pressure is strong enough, it can even rupture your eardrums, causing hearing loss and leaving you constantly dizzy. Something reached up and scratched her butt. The owner would beat the goat with sticks, and he did this to make it aggressive towards humans. They cut off his middle finger after his body was dug up for reburial. You see, he had claimed that the earth revolves around the sun and was arrested by the Catholic Church for defying God. But centuries later, his discoveries were accepted as fact, and his body was being moved from an unholy grave to a Catholic tomb. His finger was preserved in glass and placed in a museum, standing as a final gesture to those who didn't believe him. They yanked out the feathers around the chicken's butt and pressed the butthole directly onto the infected lump, strapping it on. You see, they thought it would suck out poison from the patient, and they would even seal its beak to encourage it to breathe through its butt. Once the chicken suffocated, they immediately replaced it with another one. And this method was used for centuries before people realized it didn't actually work. If you put superglue on a wound, it will actually seal the skin shut. And you might think this is a quick way to avoid stitches, but if the cut isn't clean, dirt and bacteria can get trapped inside. Doctors tried to pull out the bullet, and they used their bare hands since they didn't believe in germs. As they dug into his flesh, their dirty fingers spread bacteria into the wound, and soon the president's wound got infected. Over the next 80 days, he lost nearly 100 pounds. By the time he died, his body was filled with pus. If you were shrunk down and landed on someone's nose, you'd be surrounded by these black, wax-filled craters. If you slipped into one, you would fall through a tunnel of dead skin and bacteria. The walls would be slick and warm, coated in layers of oil. And while you were trying to climb out, fresh oil would start seeping in from the sides. It would rise fast, filling the space and pushing you deeper. To escape, you would need to somehow scale the walls quickly before the next surge buried you alive. If someone is really drunk, you put an IV in their arm, collected the blood, and then drank it. Would it be strong enough to get you drunk? Well, when someone consumes alcohol, their liver begins to break it down, and only a small amount actually stays in their bloodstream, just enough to affect their brain and body. Even if they were very intoxicated, their blood would only be about 0.2% alcohol. That's 25 times weaker than an average 5% beer. To actually feel drunk, you would need to drink over a dozen pints of their blood, and that's more than your stomach could even hold.